All right, welcome back to Athlete's Pursuit. Thanks for joining me today. This is going to be a new topic for us, a little bit different. I'm going to be talking about nutrition and just sharing my experience about nutrition, which is a heavy topic. There is a lot to discuss. It's something that I haven't gone into a lot of depth about on this show because I have a lot of respect for the space. There is a lot of finer details to have a proper conversation around nutrition. So before we get into this today, I want to kind of set the stage of how we're going to have this conversation. Again, because I have so much respect for it. The best advice that you can get about nutrition from a personal perspective is to work with a dietitian. I believe in this fully. My expertise is in building muscle, is in lifting, as a trainer, as a coach. So I can go into that level of detail and have some really in-depth conversations about that. When it comes to nutrition, you got to talk to an expert. So when we're going into the level of detail of, timing of eating, what my macros should be, what's the exact count, calorie intakes, all of that type of stuff, the real heavy detail, work with a dietitian. It will change your training life and your life in general, whether you're training for a result or just to create a healthy relationship with food. I think it's one of the best investments you can make. I have done that. I've worked with a good friend of mine. His name is Ryan Turner. He's a colleague of mine. We worked together for several years. We have an episode on Athlete's Pursuit where recently we talked about this and went into the macros of building muscle and some good approaches. I encourage you to go take a look at that episode and even earlier episodes. Ryan and I started this podcast together years ago, and he's a great resource. He also has his own individual podcast. So if you want to go deeper, I would refer you to him. Again, his name is Ryan Turner. He's incredible. I've learned a lot from him. He has helped me create this healthy relationship with food, and we're going to talk about that today. So when we get into this conversation, I want to more take it from a place of sharing my story and my journey within nutrition, and then get into some tactics, if you will, or things that I like to do, systems that I've created that have helped me create a healthy relationship with food and a balanced relationship with food that's allowing me to train at a high level, see results, to build muscle, to improve aesthetic, to improve performance, while also focusing on long-term health and finding enjoyment within it, because I think that is incredibly important when we are talking about sustainability within nutrition, that you find a way to enjoy your food. And so there is a way to look at this as we dive into the conversation, that if you want to have some really extreme results, you look at someone like a bodybuilder, a bodybuilding culture, which is very tight on macros, the amount of food that you're eating. You're measuring everything for a long period of time. You're going through, a period of a calorie surplus and then into certain deficits, and you're managing your hydration to get a certain aesthetic and a look. That is a good example of some extreme tactics to take to get an extreme result. And there's a lot to learn about that. The mistake, however, is that I think sometimes we look at that and we say, all right, so for me to get results, I need to be that strict and that tight to get that level of result. And on one hand, it's true, to get those extreme results of a very low body fat and a low aesthetic to get on stage, you do have to be that strict with macros. Now, however, there is a very different side of this where you can find a balance within this. This is where I go back to, why don't we, instead of following it to a T, why don't we take some principles that we can understand from someone like a bodybuilder or an athlete and see how they eat, and then move those principles into daily life, right? I'm not competing on a bodybuilding stage. I am just someone, probably like you, that enjoys to train, that wants to see results in the gym, but also I'm not going on stage. I'm not competing in a game right now. So I am just trying to enjoy my life at the same time. I enjoy the competition and the discipline within creating structure to see what I can do. I also weigh this with, I want to do this for a very long time, and I don't want to burn out. So I've developed kind of a system and kind of this relationship with food that allows me to find this middle ground. And that's where we're going to dive in today with this conversation. So let's go ahead and start with this with just a little bit of color on my background, my relationship with food and my journey with it. This is probably going to be, I would imagine, very similar for a lot of you. I grew up, in the Midwest. And when I grew up, food was not really a conversation about nutrition. We didn't really understand what was quote unquote healthy food, what was unhealthy, the impact of what we were eating. It wasn't a conversation within my house. We just ate food that we liked, right? My mom, dad would prepare food, would order food. We would go to family birthday parties and visit friends, and there would just be food there. We would just eat to eat. And you would just eat food that you really liked. I never even had a consideration of how is this food making me feel? Is this serving me? Is it going to make me gain weight? Is it going to make me lose weight? The sequencing of food, the timing of eating, none of this was a conversation. Or where is the food coming from? I never understood any of this. So my education with food was just non-existent. So growing up, the only thing that I really understood is that, I was always an athlete. I was playing sports as a kid. I played a lot of baseball. I played football, played basketball. So I was always active. I was always moving around. And when you're a kid, it kind of offsets that whatever you're eating just never really impacted me when I was young, before 14, 15 years old. I would just kind of eat and just be doing my thing, and it didn't impact my performance. I always felt like I played, the games I was playing pretty well and could move pretty quickly and recover pretty fast. And, it's the benefit of youth, right? Entering high school is when I would say things started to shift a little bit. I didn't understand what was going on, but looking at things in retrospect, it's kind of funny to say now, but I was playing high school baseball. That was kind of my main sport. And before going into practices or even after practices, you would kind of eat what was around you. And school lunches at the time at my high school, there wasn't a lot of great healthy options from what I remember. It would be like some pretty big cheeseburgers, pizzas, heavy type foods. And I remember starting to feel pretty tired in the middle of classes, a little bit sluggish, and even during practices still felt a little bit slow, not really sharp, didn't understand why. And even after practices, we would go and grab Taco Bell. Literally had this card where we could get, this is a true story. We had this card that would allow us to go to Taco Bell to get a buy one, get one free of anything that you wanted. So I would bring literally quarters, $2.50 to Taco Bell and get 2 quesadillas, call it a day, crush it. And that was my diet. So there was no structure. It was not great. I was eating a lot of fast food at the time. You name it, I was eating it. Wendy's, McDonald's, Burger King, a lot of fast food. So I've been on that side of the spectrum and started to feel the impact of it without really, again, understanding that it was the food, that the food was having some type of an impact on me, but I was feeling it. Growing up, I started to get into college and kind of notice the same thing. I started working out a little bit heavier. We started lifting at the end of my senior year of high school, started to get into weightlifting. So I started to pay attention and feel kind of these differences within my body of performance, starting to feel really good and powerful, and started to kind of connect these dots. But at this time, I think it's important to mention that I felt like that was a stage in my life where I was relying on our food system. And this is a big deal because this is where, if you're not having awareness around where you're going to eat or preparing for your week or thinking about structuring your meals, we get into a place of reliance of our environment, of thinking about what's around us. I think about myself going into a busy work week when I used to work in corporate America, or I think about, my wife now with her work schedule being very busy. And we had this conversation the other day where if she doesn't prepare and we don't package food or order food ahead of time and prepare, then you're reliant on what is around you during the week. And so a couple things either happen. Either you eat too little because you're so busy that it's more inconvenient to go cook something or make something versus already having something prepared. So you would just eat it and be ready to go, or you are ordering food at a restaurant or whatever is nearby. And that also is sometimes not a great option. This is a sad reality, but I think it has to be said and understood. Our culture in America does not really set us up for success. The American food system does not support us. It prioritizes convenience over quality and profit over health. This is a sad truth. It is a sad reality, but is one that I think we have to come to terms with. There are options and ways to prepare to eat healthy and to fuel yourself with what is around you by how you shop at the grocery store, using certain places and knowing how to maybe order at restaurants, working with meal prep companies, for example, or knowing the right places to go to kind of eat some food if you're in a pinch. But for the most part, just going into a place and grabbing something usually not great over the long term just because of how they cook their food. We use a lot of butter here in America when we cook stuff. And when I go out to certain restaurants, it does not sit well with me. I've done this for years. So it started to change. This is where things started to change for me moving into this evolution. When I got into college, most of my college journey was not healthy. I would say the first 2.5 years, I was also relying on the food that was provided to me at the cafeterias, or I was in a fraternity and we had our cafe there, and it was a lot of fried foods. Again, it was a lot of fast foods. I was eating a lot of McDonald's and Taco Bell when I was younger in the college years, and I gained weight and I was not feeling great. And it didn't really shift or click until I got into cycling in college. It was kind of this big sport at Indiana University, and our fraternity had a team, and I was like, I want to join this and try this out. So I started to train consistently and with a plan, and that was probably the first time outside of senior year of high school where I had this dedicated training plan to work and get better at cycling. So this was new to me, and it was heavy endurance. I'm on the bike a lot, obviously. I'm also lifting to try and improve some of this stuff. And somebody gave me a plan. I was just kind of following this thing. And I got really into it. I really enjoyed the challenge, right? And I started to notice that after my sessions, I would start to crave healthier foods just by training, just by being on the bike, just by sweating, just by being active, and not even understanding food still. I really still didn't understand nutrition other than certain basics of, hey, lean proteins are good, vegetables are good. But I didn't know the amounts and all that type of stuff. And I just naturally had this craving for better food because I started to understand and tie performance to what I ate the day before. You could easily start to feel that, man, if I drank last night or if I ate certain things, then getting on the bike and getting in my workout, you just it starts to impact. You feel it. And conversely, when I would eat and prepare, chicken breast and rice and some form of vegetable, and I ate that way and I was having a lot of water and hydrated, my sessions would skyrocket. I would feel so much better. And so, it doesn't take a genius to understand, this is a good thing. I started to feel good. You start to kind of connect those dots. So that's where it started to kind of open my eyes. And I started to get in better shape here, right? I started losing weight, kind of getting into it. Then after college, I get into corporate and starting to go to work. And the thing about that period of time that I'm sure you guys can relate to is that you have a pretty good amount of structure within that setting. So I started to really take advantage of that. I mean, the benefit of being in the office is that I always had, the kitchen right next to me. I would start to cook my food. I would have all this stuff readily available. So I started to just eat at my desk, eat at lunch, have the right snacks there. I started to do a little bit more research, looking at fitness magazines and being like, all right, what's some structure and things that people are doing, and starting to build a little bit of a plan. And it started to open my eyes that, all right, this really is impacting how I feel. It's impacting how I'm doing in the gym, and still didn't have a proper plan, but I'm starting to learn. And it would even go so far with preparation that I started to notice that if I went away from my food, I just started to really hate that feeling. That's New York for you right there. Thanks for the horns, guys. Appreciate you. It was in the middle. Yeah, no, Lena, I get it. Just honking his horn. We done? This is what it's like living in Manhattan, by the way. Okay, let's continue. So it got to a point that within sales, I got into sales at halfway through my career in corporate, and I started to travel a lot, like on the road. So I started to get to even a point where I was like, all right, preparation is pretty much key. Because when I was relying on food around me, it usually didn't go very well. I would like kind of rely on Panera Breads and Chipotle's, which is very common on the road, right? It was really the only thing you had, because everything outside of that was just a bunch of fast food and like these local restaurants that really, again, didn't cook things very healthy. I didn't feel like there was a lot of options. So I would even get a cooler and put it in my trunk and have my meals on ice in the trunk when I was going out for these drives and staying in hotels. I would prepare my food. I would heat it up in a microwave at gas stations and eat my food in the car. I was that prepared. I was like, I'm ready to go with this stuff. I started to get to that level of detail. And when I was on the road, I started to have these eye-opening moments because I'm working in healthcare. And this is what's going on in our world. And this is what I started to understand of, like, if I'm not taking care of this stuff, you see the consequences. I would see what would happen. It got so bad that I remember visiting a hospital in Virginia. It was a major hospital in Virginia. And I'm visiting oncology centers, heart clinics. And so you're seeing people with heart disease. You're seeing people that are overweight, that are obese, that are battling with cancer and serious things that are happening. And we have our meeting and we go down into the lobby of a heart clinic, a major heart clinic in Virginia. And in the lobby is nothing but fast food restaurants, 5, 6, 7, 8 options in the lobby of a heart clinic. That was one of the most eye-opening moments to me, where I'm like, so you just go upstairs, you have your doctor's visit because of a heart issue that's probably due to diet and the food that you've been eating. You go downstairs to try and get lunch, and it's literally the problem that got you in there in the first place, just back and forth. That has stuck with me to this day. I'm like, this cannot be the route. There's got to be a better way. And I started to just have this realization of nobody's really helping us except for, it felt like myself, like I had to create these solutions myself. Another thing that I started to realize is how important your environment matters and the people around you, how much that matters. Family impact for all of us can play an enormous role in our habits. And if we want to change habits, it can be met with empowerment and support, or it can unfortunately be met with resistance. And when I was starting to try and eat healthy and really grapple with the idea of macros and timing of meals, and which we're going to talk about, I remember battling my own family when I would go home. The way that they would cook, I would no longer want to kind of eat the food that they were preparing. I didn't think I thought it was overly fatty, overly fried, a lot of sugary drinks, like all this stuff that just made me feel terrible. And so I had to, even going home, prepare my own foods and shop for myself and start to bring my own. And my family thought I was nuts because nobody else was doing this. And so that was met with resistance. I always kind of felt like, man, when I go home, I'm kind of on my own. I need to prepare myself and do this. So it is a battle that people face. This is one of the things, like working with Ryan, like you see, is that if you're married and you're wanting to change your habits, it is a lot easier when your husband or your wife or your partner wants to do this with you, because you're going to be supportive and you can kind of make this lifestyle change. And when you come home for dinner, you guys can cook and like be in line with each other and support each other. It's a massive thing. And because proximity is power, and who you're around closest to is gonna impact what your habits are, what your thoughts are, and what changes you can kind of make. So it's another thing to be aware of. These are conversations that can be difficult with family, but they're necessary to have, or at least to be aware so that you can do what you need to do for yourself. Because I did see what happens. I saw what happens clear as day, not just in the healthcare system, but quite honestly, I saw it within my own family. What happens when you don't have structure around your food? What happens when you don't train at all? What happens when you have no discipline around your health and wellness routine or no awareness around it? I've seen how that ends, and it is not good. It leads to chronic illnesses, other health diseases, obesity, quality of life starts to suffer. You're not able to enjoy things with your kids. I've seen early death in my family because of this. And it is sad to see because in my eyes, it is very preventable. We have to work at it. But man, if we do no work at all, that's the lane that we go down. And so seeing that extreme of the other side and seeing some of the things that happen in our healthcare system, I just made this oath to myself that I'm like, I am not going to do this. I am not going to go down this road. And if it means that I need to prepare and do this myself, then I am going to do that. I'm going to do whatever I need to do. So education on this is going to be really important. We'll talk about some strategies that we get into or that have helped me, but I say this to you to start to change your mindset around this if you haven't already. You need to create a system for yourself. You need to prepare yourself and you need to educate yourself. The good news is there's more education and awareness around nutrition than probably there ever has before. There's great resources out there. There's great meal prep companies that are around all of us so we can really plan for this. There are ways to cook at home to really enjoy your food and find recipes that you like and stay with it and create sustainability. It does take a little effort in the beginning to create these changes. If you haven't done them before, it does take time to figure out what works for me, what the timing is, how does this food make me feel? This is a personal journey. I will say that forever. That is so true, is that foods that I like may not be foods that you like. Timing of eating for me may not work for you. Your appetite in the morning may be different than my appetite. So it's kind of more, let's pay attention to these principles around good nutrition to where we can then structure our day and our life around this so we can do this for a very long time. This is going to be the entire goal around nutrition. So this has been kind of my lead up, my journey to get to this spot. When things started to change for me is when I got to, started to get to New York, things started to change because I was working with Ryan Turner and he was helping me with this because we were training at the gym that I was at, Tone House, and it was a very high impact workout, a lot of performance, and I was under eating, I was under fueling, I was not eating enough carbohydrates, and he saw that and he was like, well, it's kind of slowing you down. Like you could experience more results, more muscle growth, create more power, better performance if you increase your carbohydrates, if you increase your protein intake. Because I was eating very little. I thought that I had to eat less to stay lean, and it was this unhealthy mindset. And some of that, for background, comes from I was modeling at the time, and when I was in South Africa doing that, I was always told, like, you need to stay a little smaller because you got to fit these clothes. You got to stay a little leaner. I was already at the time being told I was like too big. And I was like, I was probably the smallest I've ever been. So I had this pressure around it psychologically. And that's why I say that I respect this so much from a psychological standpoint, that there is a relationship that we create with food, whether positive or negative. People battle with this. And so we got to respect it so you can create a good psychological relationship around your food. So again, can't stress it enough. See a dietitian, invest in yourself with this. It will make a big difference. So now let's go into a little bit more practical approaches. I want to share some of what I've learned is what the big movers of nutrition are. Let's just go through some of the high level type things and into a little bit more advice and some approaches that I've adopted, some things that I've learned. Okay. So the first, and these are big movers. These are the things that, let's say, like if we pay attention to 80% of this, we're going to be in a pretty good spot, right? Some of the details is where you're like, hey, let me work with someone, an expert, to really hone in on the little things that I need to pay attention to with the specific macros, the specific calories, the specific foods, okay? But big movers. The first one is to get an idea of your macros and your caloric intake. There are tools that are out there. Again, a dietitian is always going to be the best resource to create that system of what my numbers, quote unquote, look like based on the goals that I have. Another good general resource is that Tonal has a nutrition plan that you can even just Google. Tonal nutrition plan was designed by a dietitian that will give you some macro guidelines. I like that resource as a good blueprint. When you have a decent handle on your food, I think a nice structure is nice, and a good blueprint to follow is pretty good. To give you an idea there, I don't count macros today. I look at things like that as a guideline for myself. So that's a great resource to look at. Another thing to think about is, if you haven't tracked macros before, I encourage you to do it for 1 to 3 months, because I do think that there is something very beneficial about understanding what you're putting into your body and getting a benchmark, right? So great athletes track. This is how it works. How can you make changes or adjustments if you don't know where you are today? So don't put pressure on yourself around it. Just go ahead and whatever you're doing today, plug it into an app that allows you to track your food and see what the macros are, see what the calories are. And then you can compare it kind of to your baseline to give you a nice benchmark, right? And doing that for 1 to 3 months will allow you to start to make adjustments. You'll be able to say, all right, well, maybe if I take this away or if I add this, and then you can also start to pay attention. Well, how does this make me feel, right? So you can say, I woke up today feeling pretty good. So I can look back and say, oh, it's because I did X, Y, Z. So that's a pretty nice part of my routine. Measuring this type of stuff is always great to do. And if you want to measure nutrition results, a good resource is something like an InBody scan. This is something that I still do today, that every, I don't know, maybe 2-3 months, I'll do an InBody scan, which is just a way to measure your body composition, your weight, your muscle mass, throughout the entire body. So you can start to say like, hey, is what I'm doing moving me towards a goal that I have, right? And you can start to make adjustments. Or you can say like, hey, I'm maintaining. This is exactly where I want to be. But it gives you objective data. That's what this is removing emotion and looking at it objectively is a good way to do this. And I did used to count macros, and I like it from the sense of it's a good training tool. I saw it as a temporary thing of, if I can do this for 3 months and kind of have a simple meal plan and know how to cook, then I can look at portion sizes. I can understand how much protein I want, how I feel when I am locked in like this. You notice energy levels change, and that will carry with you. It's a good reference point, right? So that's kind of the big deal there. The next thing is, no surprise, high protein diet is key. This is something that I definitely live by and prioritize. I think no matter what you're doing, you prioritize protein. And for me, it's just lean proteins. I usually look for things that are like a ground turkey, chicken thighs or chicken breasts, salmons, lean beef, tilapia. These things are like a 90-10 type split with it being lean. As long as it's like a good lean protein, that's what I look for. And I use that for almost all my meals during the week to make like all kinds of foods with that. Another big deal was carbohydrates. I used to struggle with this, but carbs are fuel. I used to undereat my carbohydrates, and it used to impact my performance and my ability to improve dramatically. Some of this can be psychological, which again is important to work with somebody professionally if you do have like some mental barriers around this type of stuff, which I respect. It's real. But it's worth investing in to say like, I gotta see this as something that's very necessary for performance. I kind of talk a lot about eating to feel good, eating to feel powerful and to feel strong. And that's what happens when you're eating the right amount of carbohydrates. Your muscles are fuller. You're able to recover better. I'm able to train harder. I'm able to perform better. I get more energy, more explosiveness. And conversely, if my carbs are too low for too long, like if I'm doing this for 6 months, a year, which again, I was in the past, I experienced muscle loss. I experienced loss of muscle fullness. My energy was dipping. It was inconsistent. It can mess with your hormones, like testosterone loss can happen. A raise in cortisol can happen. I experienced all of that, and it's not worth it. It's not a good feeling, right? This is about feeling powerful when I'm in my sessions. So getting a good amount of clean carbs is a must, man. I'm eating pasta all the time. I'm eating rice all the time, potatoes all the time, bread all the time. I crush this stuff. And it is the biggest driver and one of the biggest changes that I've noticed. High protein, high carb, feeling good. Something with carbs I'll mention is that what I like to do is treat that like a lever as well. So if I'm training at a high level, pretty high demand, high volume, increasing even my conditioning sessions, well, it just makes sense. I need more energy. I increase my carbs. If I'm more in a recovery week, a rest period, lower volume, lower intensity, I might dial it a little bit down to match my activity level a little bit, is a nice rule of thumb. The next big mover is structure helps, but flexibility matters. I do have a structure and some rules that I like to follow, but I also live within the space of having freedom within it because I don't want to feel restricted by the structure. I want to feel empowered by it, right? So I've just developed this relationship to this, that the more I can follow a structure, it's like this game I play. It's kind of like this fun game. The more that I can follow a structure within a day, within a week, within a month, well, the more results I'm going to kind of feel, right? I'm going to get better muscle growth. I'm going to feel better in my workouts. I'm going to be a little bit leaner. I feel like that's, a great thing. You can kind of play that game. It's like a fun competition I play with myself to just be like, how disciplined can I be for a long stretch of time? Conversely, I balance that out, that if I'm like, hey, I've been pretty tight for like 3 months and I feel like I want to relax a little bit and kind of tailor it back a little and be a little bit more loose with my food and enjoy some things a little bit more, well, I'll do that, but understanding that as I do that, well, I might have a little bit of a body fat increase, right? I might notice these types of things happen. Okay. I think it's great for the soul, man. In season, off season, there ain't nothing wrong with that. So structurally, in a daily basis, I aim for 4 to 5 meals a day, right? It's not rigid. I don't always hit that, but it's kind of somewhere where I'm going. I would say about 80 to 90% of the meals that I'm eating during the week are home cooked and prepped and or done through a meal prep company. So this is where I say it's tight. This means that I'm eating the protein that I bought. This means it's like the lean ground turkey that I've made, that I know is made with, I cook with olive oil, not butter. So it's like a good, I know it's lean. I know what's in it. It's clean. I'll match it with a carb, that type of stuff. That's 80 to 90% of my meals. This is an idea of like a meal go-to structure for me in a given day, just high level to give you an idea. Because I think it's important to give you an idea, but I want you to, when I say this, I want you guys to understand, I'm not telling you guys to do what I do. I'm saying understand it from like a structure for inspiration for yourself, right? There's a million ways to eat, just like there's a million ways to train. This is stuff that has helped me, and I'll kind of guide you as to why. For breakfast, I do not have a great appetite in the morning. I don't know if you guys struggle with that. I have struggled with it for a long time. It's not always been that way for me, but for whatever reason, in my 30s, I've struggled with an appetite in the morning. So I start with a protein shake that has 2 scoops of protein, around like 40 to 50 grams. I do about a cup of oats in there for my carbohydrates. I add about a half a cup or a cup of fruit, and I'll add my creatine dose in there, mix with some water, have my morning shake. We're ready to rock, man. That kind of gets me going to jumpstart my day. Sometimes if I'm feeling a little hungry, I'll add a snack in between that and lunch, or I'll just go right to lunch. This is where I get really robotic, man. High protein meal like turkey, rice, veggies, make it a burrito, make it a wrap, make it a taco, make it a taco bowl, make it a turkey burger, add some turkey bacon to it, have your whole wheat patty, put some cheese on it, have some potatoes, have some French fries that you maybe cut from potatoes. See what I'm saying? You have maybe a salad with it if I'm trying to be a little bit, I don't know, if I want to be a little leaner during that point. But the point is protein, carb, veggie. Dude, easy post-workout meal, little heavier on the carb. Post-workout, that's when I go, if I'm treating myself, I go get a bigger burrito at Chipotle, or I'll make a bigger burrito at home. Maybe I'll add some rice to that burrito. I'll kind of have my heavier meal, high protein again. Dinner, guess what? Shocker, lean protein, rice, veggies, same concept as lunch. Here's my lever. My lever is snacks. At night, my wife and I love to snack. We love food, guys. We love to eat. So if I am, again, being a little quote unquote tighter, I'll have snacks like rice cakes, carrots, hummus, popcorn, these types of things. Makes a lot of sense, right? Pretzels with hummus, all that kind of good stuff, bread with hummus, etc. If I'm like, you know what, man, I just want to eat some good food, I'll go to Trader Joe's and get the chocolate peanut butter cups. I'll snack on a couple of those. I'll have potato chips. Or I want some barbecue chips. I'll just eat them. I know they're not the best thing. I don't care. I want it, so I'll eat it. I'll have ice cream. I'll have chocolate chip cookie dough is my shit. I will have that at night, and I will have ice cream. Here's the thing that I've learned about that is that in my younger years, I would beat myself up for having that type of food and being like, you just broke your diet. And as I've gotten older, I've been like, that is bullshit. It does not, it's not what you do some of the time. It's what you do all the time. It's about what you do consistently. So if I'm walking through this world and for 3 months to 6 months to a year, I'm following my 80%, 90% of the time, I'm lean and mean, dude, I'm having some damn ice cream at night. You know what I'm saying? But here's what I've also learned too, that if I want to have a little bit of ice cream, why don't we have, a few spoonfuls? If I'm having the peanut butter chocolate cups, why not have 2 or 3 versus 10 or 15? I've learned that if I have a craving for something, I honor the craving. I'm going to have it. It just doesn't mean that I overindulge. You see what I'm saying? But what I have learned is that if I restrict myself and I restrict myself for so long, that's something that leads to me binging, which is not what I want. So when people ask me, do you have cheat meals? I honestly sometimes go like, not really. Because if I actually really want something, like I have it because I know that during the rest of my week, like if you could tally up all of your meals, just like Monday through Sunday, every time that you ate, and you knew that if you tallied it together that I was macro focused and on point for 80 to 90% of them, do you really think that the other 10% matters that much if you're like just not going overboard with it? It doesn't. And this is the balance that I have to find within life. So another thing that we do is like on Friday nights, for example, my wife and I like to just kind of eat food for enjoyment. We still are mindful with our food, but it's also a time of like, hey man, the week is wrapped. If we want to have pizza, that's when we order a pizza, and it's like, we're going to enjoy our night. We're going to have some wine and going to have some pizza. Or if we want to order out from like our favorite pasta spot, or if we want to go out with, friends, we have that dinner and we don't worry about it because again, we're training, we're on point with this stuff, man. This is where most of our habits are around this, our health and locked in. So we can enjoy these things. You want to enjoy these things. Also with social events, I kind of have this rule that if I'm around friends and going out to dinner, that at least if it's at the cadence of about once a week or every other week, then I don't worry about it. When I'm out, I'm having the wine, I'm eating what I want. If it's more than that, we got to start thinking. Like when I was in sales, we would eat a lot going out to dinners and stuff like that. And it got too much to where I had to put some rules around going out to dinner and be like, I am going to choose to eat clean here. I know that everybody's having like whiskeys and steaks and doing all that stuff. This is important to me that during the week I am, doing the right things for myself, right? So you can understand how often you're doing this. But the point is you got to find that balance within yourself, and restriction long-term is really not a great answer. Something that I've learned, moving on to another way to look at this, is we can have these rules around like food, like this structure, which I think is really great. It's really like an awareness. Like that what I just mentioned above to you is really like high level what my system is. It really is that simple. And then more than that, what I've learned talking about this with certain people is not even, sometimes it's what I'm doing, but often it's what I'm not doing. The power of elimination is pretty big. And instead of focusing just on these strict rules of how I eat and the things that I use, let's talk about what I don't include. I do not eat fast food. It's almost non-existent in my diet today. Unless you count Chipotle as a fast food. I sometimes have that. But honestly, fast food, I don't have it. I don't like fried foods. It makes me feel weird. It's not my thing. I limit calories from beverages hardcore. I do not like getting calories from drinks unless it's like a protein drink, right? So I'm talking about like sodas, sugary drinks and beverages. I don't do. I really 95% of the time just have water with some Mio in it for flavoring. That's what I do. That works for me because I just want to slam water. Sometimes, like right now, I'm drinking a Poppy. Poppy's pretty good. Like I like that stuff and it's pretty tasty. If you need some flavor, a little something. I don't do anything fried. And we watch our sauces. Like I'll have things like, your ranch barbecues to like lighten things up, but I'm mindful of heavy buttery sauces, fatty sauces. It's a limit. I'll season forever all the herbs and spices you can imagine, but we're pretty tight with the sauces that we use. The power of elimination is a pretty big deal. So hopefully you're seeing kind of a picture here of what this framework is. And the goal here, going back to it, is that when I was learning about nutrition and saying, how do I want to craft this? I've kind of done it all. And I've seen what's worked for me. I've seen what's not worked for me. There's ways to win short term, but it didn't serve me in the long term. Because I also did do the massive tracking and I went a little bit too overboard with it and I felt really restrictive. So I'm kind of speaking from experience there where I'm like, this isn't working for me. I'm not enjoying myself. I'm not going out to dinners with people. That's not a good way to live either. And I did that when I was younger. And that it played a toll on me psychologically. It's not fun. So to really reiterate, this is about finding foods that serve you and that you love to eat and just finding a healthy way to enjoy them. Really think about that. Like something that might help you that I have done over the years is we all have different tastes. We all have different things that we really enjoy. Why not try making a list of all the foods that you just like to eat without thinking about how they're healthy? I'm just saying, like, I love this stuff, right? Everybody knows I like burritos. I talk about them a lot. But I'm like, all right, I like burritos. I like tacos. I like pasta. I love pasta. I like burgers. I like smash burgers. We like chicken. I like barbecue chicken. I like chicken wings. I love French fries. I love potato type dishes. You kind of get the picture. I like stir fry. Love Chinese food. I like Thai food. Love dumplings. Love sushi. So you take this list and you go, all right, so how can I find recipes where I'm in a little bit more control of the ingredients and create a healthy alternative to it? I'll give you a couple great resources on Instagram that I look to. One is Cook Like I'm Book. I think that's what the whole thing is, the whole name is. But he has cool recipes that are healthy. Tasty Shreds is another one that I follow that I think has great recipes that you're eating food that you like and it's hitting some macro muscle building kind of function, right? So I think that's a great way to do it. You can get inspiration for recipes. Something that I've done as simple as just an example of knowing that I love pasta, right? So I like making spaghetti all the time. Something that I'll do frequently is just cook the noodles, just get good pasta, cook the noodles up in water as you normally do, right? And instead of getting sauce from a can, I will get regular crushed tomatoes in the can and I will make my own marinara sauce. So you know that you're getting pure tomatoes and you season it how you need to, the salt, pepper, paprika, oregano, whatever you want to put into it. But it's quality tomato sauce. That's all that it is. There's nothing extra crazy in it. No weird preservatives. You're just getting natural sauce. And I'll add in my ground beef, like the 90-10 ground beef or ground turkey. And you got a very simple pasta meal that's high in protein and clean and great carbs. Like that's a great thing that I have all the time. So, that's something to think about. When you approach this goes back to the lens of finding this balance for sustainability. And I'll kind of share this with you that when we talk about food, sometimes it gets a little confusing where we're looking at examples of someone like that bodybuilding world that we were talking about before. And often people think that when I'm training for a result and I'm training to build muscle and to be lean, that I have to eat the way a bodybuilder does getting on stage. And yes, that will get you results, but I encourage you to remember that that's an extreme side of things. I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm not saying don't compete with it. I'm just saying that understand that that's for a result. That's for a competition. It's not meant for forever. Now, that's where you get the idea of like the chicken and rice. It's a little bit more bland. I don't think they use a lot of sauces. It's way more tight. And again, if you enjoy that, if you like doing that, I know people that like to eat like that for a long time. That's cool, man. As long as you feel healthy with it and you feel strong, I think it's great. But for me, I look at that as just more inspiration of like, all right, if I want to get a little bit more tighter, I can look at those principles. This is more my approach for sustainability that I'm having a lot of success with, where I don't feel deprived. I feel empowered. My performance is improving and all that type of stuff. So to close with this, to give you like some closing thoughts, I hope this helps. It's a little bit more overarching. Again, go to a dietitian for a little bit more kind of in the details with this. But the main goal here is to feel empowered with your food. Eat clean, love what you eat. This is not an on and off switch, right? That's a mistake that people make. And this is why I'm really hammering this point, is that if you think about it in terms of dieting, then you think about it in terms of, for a period of time I am on. It means that I am strict for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever. So then my question to you is, what happens after that? Because if it's an on-off switch, so cool, you're dialed in for 3 months. Well, then what happens for the next 3 months? What happens for the next 3 years? Right? So if I'm doing something so strict, so unsustainable, so extreme, can I carry that over? Can I really do that? And that's the question that you got to ask yourself, is what do I need to do to make this something that is sustainable? How can I create habits that are going to carry me for a long time? So instead of an on-off, think of it as a dial. And we just had this conversation with Austin Current on the last episode of, maybe it's a little bit more like, hey, I want to get really dialed in. Let's crank up the dial to 90%. So I'm going to be a little bit tighter. And then, all right, I've been doing this for like 3 months. I feel really proud of the results I got. I was really locked in. Well, let's turn the dial back. Let's take it down to maybe 70 or 80%. You can do that. I do that all the time because I like playing these games with myself where I'm like, all right, I want to challenge myself and see what I can do to be really on point for the next 3 months. I got a program I'm really excited about. I really want to see what I'm capable of, or I got a race coming up or a competition. I just want to see what I can do. Like, I love that challenge, man. But at the end of that, just like an athlete going into an off season, psychologically, we need a little bit of a taper to just be like, all right, breathe. We did a good job right there, man. And you can like celebrate, and you can say, I'm going to have, I'm going to be a little bit looser. I'm still going to be mindful about my food. I'm always mindful about my food because I don't want to eat things that are going to make me feel bad. Right? I don't want to overeat in ways that make me feel bad. I'm always paying attention to the energy, and the way food impacts me, whether I'm eating a little bit looser or tighter. That's always kind of at the forefront of my mind. So you can have that dial of intensity, right? And that has helped me psychologically because you don't have to be so strict all the time. You can take the pressure off, and it's like, it's okay. And even when you're a little looser at that like 80, 20 or 70 or whatever that dial is for you, you can still be mindful in when you're eating. I don't think that this is talked about enough. We always talk about food now these days in terms of like a result. Like, it's to build muscle, it's to have a low body fat, it's to improve this performance, which is cool. I think it's great because it can be really exciting, but it's worth noting and saying that there is a way to eat healthy where you're just eating for health, where it's not just a result. You understand what I'm saying? Like, honestly, man, I think about this. Like we traveled to Italy not long ago. This is my first time over there, and eating the food there. I mean, you hear about it, right? The food is incredible. That's a good example where, I'm looking around, I don't see people tracking their macros when they're going out to dinner in Italy, right? We're just eating good quality foods, and you feel good after eating that meal. Why? Because the ingredients are fresh. They're using the best, most fresh ingredients available to them. They're not putting weird preservatives and crazy stuff into their food. It is grown from the ground. So if it's real natural food, we're not talking about a result. I'm talking about health now. That's where it can be more relaxed. And this is about knowing yourself too. I think about this for me, that if I was not building muscle, for me is important to me. Having a certain body fat percentage right now is important to me. It impacts how I eat and my structure. These are priorities to me. But I also think down the road, if I'm like 60, 70, I'm in a different stage of life, and maybe I'm training, but it's not at the level that I'm at, and I just want to enjoy my life. I want to stay healthy. And just imagine that structure. Maybe I'm lifting 2 or 3 times a week. I kind of take it down. I'm going for longer walks, and I'm like, I want to just enjoy food. I'm not counting macros. I'm just going to a restaurant, and I'm more paying attention to just the quality of ingredient over the calorie and the macro that I'm hitting. Does that make sense what I'm saying? This is that degree of change. This is like knowing yourself, and that's eating for health. That's important too. And I don't know if that person, I don't think gets enough. I don't know, man. We don't talk about that person enough too. We always talk about this extreme lens, and I'm a big fan of like, let's shine light on the person that's right in the middle, that just wants to eat healthy and enjoy life in a different way. And it doesn't have to be obsessed over this. That is worth noting. I'll also say this as we're nearing the end here, that kind of a disclaimer. I see this happen sometimes when we talk about food in terms of coaches creating meal plans and what that can do sometimes. That if you're not working with a dietitian, but you're just working with a coach, someone who's not really a registered dietitian, but someone that's giving you a meal plan, there's a thing that happens within this space where you'll see dramatic results over 30 to 60 days. Because you see someone work with a coach and they go, here's the first time that I am following a structured lifting plan, and here's the first time that I'm following like a strict macro guideline. And you'll see people like that get these kind of dramatic results with an aesthetic over the next 30, 60 days. And you got to ask yourself why that is. And when I see that as a coach, I think about two things. You get that result, and that's pretty cool, right? You see some loss in body fat, you see an aesthetic result. But my question is, well, why does that happen? And when you really look at it, it's like, well, was that person on a structured plan in the past? Usually not. So really the impact is, hey, we were structured. We didn't have structure before, but now we have structure. And two, from a nutrition side, we were in a deprived state. We were eating at a deficit. And so when we do that for 30 to 60 days, yeah, I can have a decrease in body fat. Yeah, I can see that happen and get a little bit more cut, if you will. But my question to you is, what happens after that? That's something to always pay attention to when you're working with someone and you're thinking about this. It's not about 30 to 60 days. I want you to ask, what is it like 3 years from now? What is it like 10 years from now? Because when you're working with someone like a dietitian, that's the goal. It's how can I eat well for years, for decades? Can you teach me food? Because I've seen too often where you have someone get these results in 30, 60 days, check in with them in a year, and they might lose those types of results because they weren't taught sustainability. So remember that I'm not a fan of these short-term results. Just be mindful of something like that, okay, as you're going through and kind of learning this stuff. And the last thing I'll kind of say is food is good for the soul, man. It really is. And remember that piece of it too. Again, I love the competitive aspect of this. I love, eating for performance and kind of challenging yourself. I find enjoyment in that. I love testing myself. You guys know I do. This is my hobby, man. This is my challenge. And I know it is for a lot of you guys as you're going through this. But remember too, that as we're going through life, and especially as we're aging and we're wanting to just enjoy the quality of life and the people around us, that there's something to be said about just food being great for the soul. Having dinner with your friends and just eating great pasta and enjoying great wine and celebrating with your people and just not thinking about it and having a good time and eating foods that you love, right? That taste the best, that are cooked so well and prepared so well. Don't deprive yourself of that too. There's something to be said there. So stop thinking in terms of extremes and find a center, find a balance with your eating. Think of it as a dial so you can turn it up, turn it down, so you can do this for a very long time. This is about health so that we can enjoy our lives for a very, very long time. To me, this is about being conscious, however, about the things that can impact my ability to build muscle, my ability to feel good, my cognitive performance, my ability to change my aesthetics should I desire, and then also my ability to scale it down and eat healthy, but maybe not be so extreme into the competitive space as I used to as I get older. This is about having power and empowerment back with your food. You get what I'm saying with that? That's how I see this, man. The more knowledge you can have of this, the more awareness you can have of this, you can carry this with you for the rest of your life. And this is a big part of how we can stay healthy as we age. So it doesn't always have to be about aesthetic. It can also be about, I really want to enjoy food that's grown well, that's sourced well, that's quality ingredient, so that I can age well and feel great as I do it. So I hope that offers you a different perspective, an empowering one, I hope. I know it's a big conversation. There's a lot to talk about this. Let me know if you guys do have more questions about food, because at that point, if we dive deeper, we'll always bring somebody on to dive a little bit more into these topics, like an expert to get into it. That's where I'm going to leave you guys. Thank you for hanging with me today. Hope this episode was enjoyable. Until next time on Athlete's Pursuit, I'm Joe Rodanis. I'll see you guys out there.